Hey, I'm Lucas, and as you may have seen in a previous video, we are reading When Narcissism Comes to Church, and I am I don't know, I'm a few chapters in, and if you're reading along, then this will probably be meaningful to you. If you haven't started the book yet, I would encourage you to get a copy. I'm listening to it on audio, and it's very enlightening. I've been in church work for a long time, and it really is kind of bringing light to some past experiences that I've seen that I never really kind of was able to make sense of. So in the book, one of the questions that would come up for just about anybody is, what is narcissism? Like, what is the common denominator? Like, what makes a behavior narcissistic? And so I kind of wrote down a couple of things here: self-focused, entitlement, and lack of empathy. Okay, so the behaviors that I'm going to bring to your attention, each of those, that's the the book will bring to your attention, I guess I should say. That's the common denominator, is self-focused, entitlement, and lack of empathy. Okay, so what's interesting about Chuck DeGroat's book is that he demolishes the myth that narcissism is the big personality, the gregarious person, the grandiose person, the massive ego and attention seeking. And so what he does in the first chapters, whatever chapter I'm in, I can't remember, maybe one or two, maybe two or three, I don't know. But what he does is he takes the Enneagram. Do you remember the Enneagram? It became really popular on the internet a while back for people to test their Enneagram, kind of like it's a personality type. I think that's the right thing to call it. But it's like a personality type. And I want to say there's 9 of them. And so what Chuck does in this book is he shows that each of those personality types, which are supposed to kind of cover the spectrum of personality, each of those can tend toward narcissism, and it looks really different based on the personality type. So, of course, in there, one of the personality types does lend itself to that big, grandiose kind of narcissism that's, very ego focused and, attention seeking. But he goes through 8 other ones that are not that way, and that you might recognize. Like, when I listened through it, for most of them, I thought of somebody. It was like, I think maybe they've struggled with that. And his point is to show that any personality type, any person can tend towards narcissistic behaviors. And that's actually really valuable to recognize that, because it helps us to remember that the condition is not the person, right? The dysfunction is not the person. The person is valued by God. The person is a whole person who has some dysfunctional behaviors. And when they get squeezed, or when they get squished, or when they get stressed, those behaviors become more prominent. They kind of stick out. And so one that, and here's another thing that kind of occurred to me as I was reading, is that for certain personality types, they are probably more harmed. I haven't gotten far enough in the book to really, maybe he talks about this, we'll find out, but it occurred to me that certain personality types are probably more harmed by other personality types' narcissistic behavior. And I'll give you an example. For me, over the years, I've noticed that I am more harmed by what he calls perfectionistic narcissism, the type of narcissistic behaviors that come with a perfectionistic person. That one is pretty harmful to me when I encounter that in other people, because I am so different from that. I'm so opposite from that. And so for you, if you've encountered narcissistic type behaviors, you may not have even realized it. So one of the ways to kind of identify that maybe you've been touched by this in a negative way is that you can think through painful experiences that you've had that are chronic with certain relationships, not like a single painful experience or like a misunderstanding and then you never really had any more painful experiences in that relationship, but a relationship where it's like consistently you're hurt by this other person's behavior. It's very possible that their behavior is leaning towards a narcissistic behavior. And remember, what makes that behavior narcissistic is self-focused entitlement and a lack of empathy. So far this book is very enlightening. Now, one of the things I want to wrap up with this, Chuck is not trying to give us tools to label people. Right? So like I'm not a professional counselor. And if you're watching this, most of you aren't. There might be some professional counselors, but most of you are not professional counselors. And we have to be really careful about turning someone into a label. And I suspect you pick up a book about narcissism. The reason you would pick that up is because you've been hurt by somebody and you suspect maybe they have some narcissistic tendencies. And so it's actually pretty important to slow down on that front. And it occurred to me today as I was reading this book that the goal should be not to label that person, but to love that person and to show them that they're loved and to help them, to both help you to interact with them more healthily, but also help them to recognize and interact more healthily. And if you only ever get to the first, to just label it so that you don't feel crazy, that's okay too. But the end goal, hopefully, would be that it's to help that person feel loved and to feel that lack that they're feeling you'd be able to help them. So, and I should say this, that for narcissism, that self-focused entitlement and lack of empathy, what he's kind of pointing out is that those come from some need, and those behaviors are, I would say designed. They're not designed, but they happen because the person is trying to fill a need within themselves. That actually helped me quite a bit to not be upset about what I think is probably narcissistic behavior in others, to realize that, oh, they're hurting or they're running from a hurt or they've probably experienced trauma, and this is a coping mechanism. That's a really different thing than just like, oh, they're mean or they're a jerk or they've been awful to me, So that was actually helpful for me to recognize that. So lots of valuable stuff in this book so far. Highly recommend it from what I've read so far. Now, like I told you in the last video, I haven't read the whole thing. We may come to things that I'm really uncomfortable with, but so far I can see why people like this book. It's pretty valuable. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for other updates and discussions. I'm going to be out of town teaching at a Bible college next week, but I think I'll probably have time in my schedule to be able to do this again. So watch for those, should be coming up within the next week. Thanks for watching. See you later.